It's Jody Eckleberry-Hunt, and I decided to do a series of video interviews with other psychologists that I'm lucky to know. And it's all to promote my book, Badass Stories, which comes out February 14th. So today, I have Dr. Darren Jones, who is a health psychologist in the Detroit metropolitan area. What's really cool about Darren is he brings a diverse variety of experiences. Darren has worked in law enforcement, in behavioral health management, healthcare leadership. He also specializes in men's issues. He does a lot of public speaking, particularly around physician and healthcare wellness. And I'm excited to have him here because my question for folks who I'm going to interview are what makes a person a badass in their experience. And so he comes at it from many different directions. Hey, Darren, thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, what makes a person a badass in your experience?
Well, I think one of the things that strikes me about people that I would describe as a badass, and it reminds me of a song introduction I once heard the musician Bruce Springsteen giving. And he said, it's very easy to let the best of yourself slip away. And he was talking about the character in the song that he was introducing, but you could say the same thing about a community or a society or a nation. And so what I took away from that was it's very easy to let the best of yourself go, especially when you're facing adversity, especially when you're being tested. And so the best of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that when you really strip everything away, the things that really you feel define you, and they define you at your best, and they're what you would like to be known for and remembered for. And I think when you come right down to it, those are the things that we rely on, that we really hold on to as an anchor when everything else seems like it's chaotic or we feel like everything else is being threatened. And so to me, those are some of the things I've seen in people that I find the most moving and the most notable when I see people that I would call a badass.
So interesting. I found myself thinking there are many opportunities to have been badass over the last few years with COVID and all the unrest, et cetera, to not let that part slip away. I'm thinking that'd be a great TED Talk.
Well, it's a very interesting topic, and there are certainly some great writers and researchers that are doing work with grit and other related kind of concepts. But I agree with you. I think it's an area really ripe for exploration, and I think people can really benefit from it.
So along those lines, I read in the book about post-traumatic growth. And one of the things that struck me was during the hardcore lockdown part of the pandemic, people were throwing out the idea of how can we grow from this? And I found that to be a little offensive because when bad things are happening, I don't necessarily go to let's look at the positive, but post-traumatic growth is a really important concept as you were talking about being badass, because it is the transition from moving to, yeah, this was horrible and I really feel like a victim, to becoming a survivor. One of the reasons I really wanted to talk with you is you have a background in post-traumatic growth. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background in that, and I don't know, maybe talk about what you think, how that relates to being badass.
Yeah, I'd love to. Without giving you a full bio, I actually became interested in behavioral health initially. When I was a police officer, I began to notice the people who I interacted with, citizens who I interacted with on a daily basis. Many times, people that are first responders, you are with people on what are often, if not the worst day of their life, one of the worst days of their life. And yet that's another day at the office in a sense. Like, you deal with that every day. Whether you're a police officer, a firefighter, a paramedic, maybe you work in a hospital in an emergency department or something, all the folks that see those individuals. And what I began to think about, because I think I've always had the mind of a behavioral scientist even before I had any formal training in it, but I began to wonder, like, that person I met yesterday who was in a terrible car accident, or maybe they were the victim of a horrible crime. I wonder how they're doing today. I mean, I probably won't ever see them again, but I wonder about them, and I wonder about how they're going to do next week and a month later. And so it began this thinking about that. And that really, as I went back to school and I started studying behavioral science, when I heard about this concept of post-traumatic growth, it really clicked with me, because behavioral science traditionally, as you know, really focused on the detrimental effects, the difficult things about dealing with adversity in life. And then we had the positive school of psychology, which began to say, well, let's in addition to talking about what people struggle with, let's talk about people's strengths, and let's talk about what goes right with people and not just what goes wrong with people. And so post-traumatic growth really tapped into and gave a modern framework to this idea that really is ancient. Because if we think about it, there are lots of ancient stories, either from the world's religions or from folk stories, about people who have in some way gained knowledge or insight or some other type of benefit from dealing with adversity. So they're really, to me, that shows that this is part of the human narrative, even going back probably before recorded history. So it's part of who we are. And I think that talking about it during the pandemic has brought the concept to the mainstream. I think the challenge is probably most people who hear it don't exactly know what it is, and even if they hear a definition, they might not be sure about, okay, what do I do with that information?
Yeah, well, that leads to an important question. Are there ways that you can, for example, use post-traumatic growth or concepts of resilience and that sort of thing to build badass?
Absolutely, and I think people sometimes do that in psychotherapy. That's a common place where people might explore those issues. But even for people who aren't actively involved in treatment, there are ways that they can make use of that. So one thing, and I know that you recommend this a lot in your books and in your practice, but the journaling, being able to, it's about giving voice to these experiences. And we know from research that post-traumatic growth is facilitated in part by this rumination process. It's this process of really thinking through what has happened to you, and again, giving voice to it. And you can do that verbally, obviously, by talking about it, but you can also do it through writing or through some other creative type of outlet. So I think people can really benefit from being able to exercise those ideas and being able to practice it. And I think over time, they may find that they're able to have a different perspective on what happened to them.
So I can't let you go without asking, and it relates to what you just said. You specialize in men's issues. That's something that's beyond my area of expertise generally, but I can imagine that men, because you mentioned going to psychotherapy, which some people can do, some people have a struggle with because of benefits or et cetera, but I have found in my practice, historically, I've seen more women. And I always think that it's badass for guys to walk in the door because they're going to talk about their issues with a woman, which may be uncomfortable, and it's a shit sandwich. You have to get vulnerable, et cetera. I guess I want to see if you have any comment about men coming into therapy or counseling, if there's a way to help maybe increase their interest or willingness or feelings of safety. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I'm encouraged by what I think we're seeing at least anecdotally, I think there is some research to back it up as well, though I do think the last couple of years there has been a more openness from men to seek out psychotherapy and counseling services. But traditionally, men are inundated with messages from the time that they're born, to that being a man is about being tough, and it's about resisting dealing with things like feelings and emotions. And the reality is, one of the most badass things that anybody can do, including men, can do, is to say, well, I want to be the best spouse I can be. I want to be the best father I can be. I want to be the best brother, the best son. And part of that involves being able to be present with the people that you care about. Actually be there emotionally in the moment with them. And also to be able to deal with everything that involves, because that doesn't, as you know, involve just pleasant things. It really involves some very difficult things. And so being a badass is part of that, is being willing to take that on. It takes a lot of courage to be able to step forward and do that. And what I'm hoping is that we're at a point in our society where men begin to embrace that idea and be able to incorporate that concept of what it means to be a man as means a lot more than simply resisting having any type of emotions and addressing them. That it requires the people we care about really, they need a lot more of us than just that toughness.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. In recent years, more men have sort of found counseling to be, or have reached out for counseling more often, because I have seen that in my practice. It still remains more female dominated,
Sure.
but I am seeing more men. But anyway, that's it for today. I'm so grateful. Thank you, Darren, for giving your time. If you want to find Dr. Darren Jones, he is available in the Detroit metropolitan area. Look him up, and again, thanks for being here.